Okay, so picture this for a second. You wake up, you get ready, you sit in traffic, or you cram onto a train, and you go sell 8, 9, 10 hours of your life to a company so that a number shows up in your bank account twice a month. And that's fine, right? That's the deal. That's what basically all of us signed up for without ever really signing anything. You trade time for money. Money pays for life. Life happens in the leftover hours. Most people never question that arrangement because, honestly, why would you? It's the water we all swim in. But here's the thing that nobody tells you when you're 22 and just happy to have a job. There's a version of your financial life where you stop being the only one working. Where your money gets up in the morning too, goes to its own quiet little job, and comes home with a paycheck of its own. And at some point, if you let it grow long enough, that second paycheck can actually get bigger than the first one. Bigger than your salary. Bigger than the thing you've been busting your back for your entire adult life. My name is Josh, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. Specifically the moment where the math flips, where your portfolio starts out earning your paycheck, and what that actually does to a person once it happens. Not just to their bank account, to their nervous system, to the way they walk into a meeting or hear about layoffs or think about the next 20 years. Because here's what I want to get into today. This isn't really a video about getting rich. It's a video about a very specific, very underappreciated crossover point. The day your investments quietly out-earn your job and why that day changes more than your net worth. It changes your posture. It changes your options. Stick with me, because by the end of this, you're going to look at your own paycheck a little differently. So let's actually define the thing we're talking about, because beating your salary sounds abstract until you put a number on it. Say you make $70,000 a year. Somewhere out there is a portfolio size where, at a reasonable long-term average return, the growth alone, just the growth, not even counting what you're adding, produces more than $70,000 in a year. At, let's say, a conservative long-run average, you're looking at a portfolio somewhere in the high six figures to cross that line, depending on the year, the market, and honestly a bit of luck in the timing. Some years it'll blow past your salary. Some years, if the market's rough, it won't even show up. That's the annoying, honest truth of it. This isn't a light switch, it's more like a tide coming in. Some days the water's way up the beach. Some days it pulls back and you wonder if you imagined the whole thing. But here's the part that gets people. The first time it happens, even for one calendar year, even if it's a fluke, something shifts in your head. I've talked to people who described it almost like vertigo. Like, wait, I sat at my desk for 2,000 hours this year, and my money, just sitting there, not doing anything I could see or touch, made more than that? That doesn't feel real the first time. It feels almost embarrassing, like you got away with something. And that's kind of the whole story of investing. If you zoom out far enough, it's a very long, very boring beginning, followed by a middle that feels like nothing is happening, followed by an ending that feels like magic. Compounding is famous for being like that. Slow, 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 and then suddenly not slow at all. Why does this matter to you, specifically right now, whatever your number is today? Because the crossover point isn't reserved for people who make six figures or who inherited money or who got lucky with some stock. It's just math. It's contributions plus time plus average returns. The person making $50,000 a year who starts at 25 is on a completely different track than the person making $150,000 who starts at 45, and it's not really close. Time does most of the heavy lifting here, honestly more than the size of your paycheck does. The actionable piece here is simple, if a little unsatisfying. Figure out roughly what your own crossover number would be. Take your current income and back out. At a reasonable long-term average return, what portfolio size would need to exist for the growth to match that number? It's a rough estimate, not a prophecy, but having that number, even a fuzzy one, turns this from an abstract idea into a target you're actually walking toward. Here's where I want to slow down, because this is the part people skip past. When your investments start out earning your job, the money itself is almost the least interesting part. What actually changes is your relationship to fear. Think about what a paycheck really is underneath the surface. It's not just income, it's leverage that your employer has over you. If your entire financial existence depends on that one check clearing every 2 weeks, then every decision at work gets colored by that dependency. You bite your tongue in the meeting. You take the project you didn't want. You stay an extra year at the job that's slowly hollowing you out, because the alternative feels like standing on a ledge. Now imagine, even partially, that dependency starts to loosen. Not because you quit your job. Most people in this position don't quit, actually, and that surprises people. It's because the job stops being the only thing standing between you and disaster. There's a second engine running now, and a second engine means if the first one sputters, you don't fall out of the sky. I remember talking to someone, I won't use their real name, let's just say a guy named Dave, who told me the year his dividends and growth quietly outpaced his salary, he didn't do anything dramatic. He didn't buy a boat. He didn't storm into his boss's office. He just noticed over the following months that he was less anxious in performance reviews. Less anxious about the industry rumors, the layoffs everyone was whispering about. Not because he stopped caring about his job, he still liked it mostly, but because the job had quietly downgraded in his own head from the only thing keeping me afloat to one of two things keeping me afloat, and honestly, probably not even the bigger one anymore. That's not a spreadsheet outcome. That's a nervous system outcome. And I'd argue it's the actual prize the whole time, not the number, but the calm. So here's the takeaway for this section. Don't wait until the crossover happens to notice this shift start working on you. Even being on the path, even seeing your portfolio creep from a rounding error to a meaningful chunk of your annual income, starts to change how tightly you grip the steering wheel at work. Track that number, watch it, let it start doing psychological work on you long before it does financial work. Let's break this down really simply because I think a lot of people were never actually taught this distinction. There's active money, the money you get because you personally showed up and did a task. And there's passive money, money that shows up because of a decision you made in the past, sitting there, compounding, whether you show up today or not. Most people live their entire financial lives inside the first category. They understand it instinctively. Work harder, get promoted, ask for a raise. Active money goes up. It makes sense because it's tangible. You can point at the effort and point at the result. Passive money is weirder and honestly kind of unintuitive because the effort and the result are separated by years, sometimes decades. You put $20 into an index fund in your 20s, and the actual payoff, the meaningful, visible payoff, doesn't show up until you're 40, 50, 60. There's no immediate feedback loop, which is exactly why so many people give up on it. Humans are wired for feedback. We like pulling a lever and seeing a light turn on. Investing is more like planting a tree and getting the shade 30 years later. You have to just trust that the roots are doing something down there you can't see. The reason this matters is that beating your salary with investments is really just the moment passive money finally catches up to and then overtakes active money. It's proof, undeniable numeric proof, that the tree you planted grew. And once you've seen it happen once, you never quite look at a dollar the same way again. Every dollar you don't spend today isn't just saved. It's a tiny future employee, one you're hiring to go work a night shift you'll never have to clock into yourself. I'll be honest, this reframe took me a long time to actually feel, not just understand intellectually. I could recite the compound interest math to you for years and still spend money like every dollar was just a dollar. It wasn't until I actually watched a chunk of my own portfolio's yearly growth cross over a chunk of my own income that it clicked emotionally, not just logically. Funny how that works. You can know a fact for a decade and only believe it the moment you see it with your own eyes. The takeaway: start mentally separating your active income from your passive income, even if the passive side is embarrassingly small right now. Literally write both numbers down once a year. Watching that second number creep up year after year, even slowly, even boringly, is what keeps people in the game long enough to actually reach the crossover. Now, here's a wrinkle, and I think it's important to be honest about it instead of just selling you the highlight reel. The crossover isn't a permanent state once you hit it. It can flicker. A bad year in the market, and suddenly your portfolio's growth dips below your salary again, and it can feel almost like a demotion, even though nothing about your actual wealth changed in any real sense. The number's just having an off year. This trips a lot of people up psychologically, especially the ones who reach the crossover point and then treat it like a finish line instead of what it actually is, which is more like a shoreline that the tide crosses back and forth over. Some years your investments will crush your salary. Some years they'll barely move or even go backwards. That's not failure. That's just what markets do. They don't move in a straight line ever for anybody, no matter how smart they are. The people who handle this well are the ones who understood going in that the crossover is a long-run average, not a permanent milestone you get to plant a flag on forever. They keep contributing during the bad years. Arguably, that's when you're getting the best deal, buying more for less. And they don't panic sell just because this year's tide happens to be out. Why does this matter to you? Because if you don't know this going in, the first down year after your crossover can feel like a gut punch, like you did something wrong. You didn't. The ocean just does that. Knowing it ahead of time is basically free insurance against panicking at exactly the wrong moment. The actionable piece here: decide right now before it happens that you will not treat a bad year as a referendum on your strategy. Zoom out. Look at 5-year windows, not 1-year windows. The crossover over a long enough runway becomes more and more permanent. Not because any single year is guaranteed, but because the average keeps climbing even while individual years wobble around it. So, practically, what do you do with all of this? First, honestly, just start tracking the number. Whatever you're investing, whatever your rough annual growth has looked like in past years, compare it once a year to your salary. Don't obsess over it monthly. That way lies madness. Markets are too noisy on short time frames to mean anything. But once a year, take an honest look. Second, and this is the unglamorous part nobody wants to hear, the contribution rate matters more than almost anything else in the early years. Before the compounding really kicks in, the size of what you're adding is doing basically all the work. It's only later, once the base gets large enough, that the growth itself starts pulling more weight than your contributions do. So if you're early in this journey, don't get discouraged that the growth number looks tiny compared to your salary. That's supposed to happen. That's not the system failing, that's just where you are on the curve. Third, and maybe this is the most important one, let this shift how you think about raises, bonuses, and windfalls. Every time your income goes up, there's a version of you that upgrades the car, the apartment, the vacations, and there's a version of you that quietly widens the gap between spending and investing, which is the only thing that actually moves your crossover date closer. Neither choice is morally superior. To be clear, life is short, and you're allowed to enjoy it. But you should at least be making that choice on purpose, instead of just drifting into lifestyle upgrades because that's what everyone around you seems to be doing. And fourth, this one's small, but I think it matters more than people give it credit for. Talk about this stuff with somebody. Not in a bragging way, not in a spreadsheet flexing way, just normalize it in your own circle. So much of the reason people never even aim for a crossover point is that nobody around them has ever mentioned it exists. If the only financial conversations happening around you are about which car to lease or which vacation to book, that's the water you're swimming in, and it's easy to assume that's just what money is for. You don't have to become the person who brings up index funds at every dinner party. Please don't, actually. Nobody wants that guy. But a little honest conversation about where your money's going and why tends to be contagious in a good way. So let's bring this back together, because I know I've thrown a lot at you. The crossover point, the day your investments out-earn your salary, isn't really about becoming rich, and it's definitely not some overnight thing. It's a slow tide that eventually, quietly, crosses the shoreline. What it actually gives you isn't a bigger number, it's a second engine. It's the sense that your entire life doesn't hinge on one paycheck clearing every 2 weeks. And that shift, from total dependence to shared dependence, changes how you sit in meetings, how you sleep at night, and how much of yourself you're willing to compromise just to keep a job that isn't serving you anymore. None of this happens by accident, and none of it happens overnight. I want to be honest with you about that instead of pretending there's some shortcut. It happens because years before the crossover ever shows up on paper, somebody quietly decided to treat their savings like a second employee instead of leftover money. That decision, repeated boringly for years, is the entire story. So wherever you are right now, whether your passive income is still basically zero, or whether you're already starting to see that second number creep up toward your salary, the tide is coming in either way, as long as you keep making the deposits. You don't need to feel it happening to know it's happening. Just keep planting. Now, if you found this valuable, make sure to press that like button, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.